how would you locate Gaur, the capital of the Bengali Sultanate, in the 16th century across various networks?
You see, the 16th century is a momentous time in the history of Bengal, primarily because there is so much going on at this point of time. Of course, the century begins with the Sultans of Bengal in power, but very soon it is the Afghans from the Bihar area, the Karani Sultans from Bihar, first Sulaiman Karani and then Daud Khan Karani, they migrate into Bengal. And this is also the time when the Mughals are moving into North India from Central Asia in two waves. The first in the 1520s under Babur and the second under Akbar and Humayun. Humayun very briefly because he passes away in the mid 1550s. And faced by this push from the northwest, the Afghans start migrating towards the east. So under Babur, the Afghans retreating from Punjab and the Indo-Gangetic divide, Delhi-Agra region, mainly settle down in today's UP, Bihar, Bengal, these parts. But under Akbar, as the thrust of the Mughals is far greater in the Gangetic basin in the mid-1550s, the Afghans have to retreat much more into Bengal. This whole process starts under Sulaiman Karani, continues under Daud Khan Karani, and then is continued by the various Afghan chieftains who take refuge not only in the western part of Bengal, but also in Orissa and also in modern Bangladesh. So on the one hand, we see this eastward migration of the Afghans throughout the 16th century, but more so in the second part of the 16th century. In their footsteps, the Mughals follow. And while Humayun leads an abortive campaign into Bengal in the mid-1530s, it is mainly under Akbar, 1570s onwards, that the Mughals expand rapidly into Bengal. So, the history of Mughal expansion into Bengal, once again, mid-1570s onwards, is a history of eastward penetration in the close footsteps of the Afghans. Towards the south, especially in southeast Bangladesh, in the Chattogram, Shondip areas of modern Bangladesh, we also see the rise of Portuguese settlements at this point of time. Rila Mukherjee, for example, has worked on this extensively. So, following the advent of the Portuguese embassies, settlers in the Bengal Sultanate in the early 16th century, there is rapid growth in what we can say the outlaws among the Portuguese, the pirates, the renegades, military professionals who wanted to escape the strict grip of the Portuguese mission at Goa and seek fortune on their own as mercenaries, as professional soldiers in various parts of South Asia. Eaton and Wagner, for example, have taught us about their activities in the Deccan. And very similar things were happening in Bengal when Portuguese soldiers were taking up employment in the Afghan Sultanate, and also with various Bengali and Afghan zamindars or chieftains of eastern and southeastern Bengal at this point of time. We also see the rise of a group of landed chieftains whom Mughal sources refer to repeatedly as the Baro Bhuiya. Bhuiya is a Bengali word that means that's equivalent to zamindar, landholder in a loose sense of the term, but we should interpret them more as chieftains, military chieftains. We have Kedar Rai, Protapaditya, all these Hindu Bengali zamindars, but at the other hand, we also have Afghan chieftains like Isa Khan, like Khwaja Usman and others. So it is within this very complex setting, political, geopolitical, social setting of Bengal, that we have to locate Gaur. And here we cannot forget, last but not the least, the Ahoms, who are there to the northeast of Bengal, mainly in the Brahmaputra Valley in the modern Indian federal state of Assam, who have been there for a couple of centuries before this, but it is in the 16th century that they become really powerful. And when the Mughals repeatedly try to venture into Assam in the 17th century, they launch 4 major expeditions into Assam. All of them are defeated. So it is within this geopolitics of shifting power, multi-ethnic power. There are the Portuguese, there are the Afghans, Mughals, Bengalis, Ahoms. So it is within this very colorful political mosaic that we have to locate Gaur.
My second question to you would be, what are the implications of ecological and human transitions on this region as a whole?
Here again one has to start with Eaton. Not only his initial book on Bengal, The Rise of Islam and the Bengal Frontier, but also his new book, The Unending Frontier, which is a ecological history of frontiers across the early modern world. What Eaton teaches us is that it is in the 16th century that the ecology of Bengal undergoes a very fundamental shift. When the Ganga abandons the Bhagirathi Hooghly as its main distributary into the Bay of Bengal, and the bulk of the river flows into the course that we today call Podda, that flows into modern Bangladesh. What this results in, and this is a very long process that starts in the 16th century but has gone on over several centuries, is that over a long period of time the Bhagirathi Hooghly has got less and less water from the Ganga, while the bulk of the water has flowed into the Podda channel that has gone into Bangladesh. This has been supplemented by, for example, the southward movement of the Damodar and Rupnarayan rivers in the 18th century that has made the Bhagirathi Hooghly river even less prosperous over time. But what this meant in the 16th century, especially the late 16th century onwards, is that the Bhagirathi Hooghly ceased to be the main distributary of the Ganga in Bengal. Along with the shift in the major channel of the Ganga towards the Podda in Bangladesh, what Eaton shows is that 15th century onwards, but majorly late 16th century onwards, there is an active patronage of the state to spread cultivation towards the east. On the one hand, there is forest clearance that is not only led by land grants given by the state, but also by the big peasants, by Sufis who lead land clearance movements in eastern Bengal, Sufis who throughout the medieval times have gone on, settled among peasants in the east and have led movements of land clearance. But all of this gets a major impetus the late 16th century onwards with the coming of the Mughals in Bengal. Gaur, that was located on the banks of Ganga, starts falling out of favor of these political powers, mainly mid 16th century onwards, because of the water in this area close to Gaur no longer remaining the area which would get fresh water from the Ganga regularly. It becomes an area of stagnation, and this, as Eaton points out, leads to a major outbreak of plague in 1575, when for only 1 year Munim Khan had shifted the capital from Tara to Gaur. Because prior to the Mughal occupation of Tara, which was the capital of Suleiman Karani in Bengal, it was Suleiman Karani who had shifted the capital from Gaur to Tara. Tara being located in an area which oversaw a thriving part of the river, rather than Gaur, which oversaw now in the mid 16th century a stagnating part of the river. Munim Khan made the mistake in 1575 of shifting the capital of the newly conquered areas of Mughal Bengal back to Gaur. And it is Eaton who points out that this backfired completely, and because of the stagnating waters near Gaur, this led to a severe outbreak of plague in Mughal Gaur, which eventually led to a huge amount of casualty in the Mughal camp, leading to the illness of Munim Khan himself and his death in 1575. Following which, the next Subedar shifts the capital back to Tara. So, one would have to say that the shifting ecology of Bengal in the mid 16th century, or the latter part of the 16th century, one can say, deeply impacted how the emergent political powers of Bengal, first the Karani Sultanate and then the Mughals who displaced the Karanis, perceived Gaur. And it is also in this context that we see an eastward shift of political power in Bengal. And with the coming of Mughal political power, with the spread of Mughal, I would say, agrarian patronage in eastern Bengal, there is also a significant spread of Islam in eastern Bengal. For example, once again Eaton shows us how the Chattogram area, which always till the 16th century served as a frontier area between Bengal and Arakan, which is in northwestern coastal Burma, gets heavily Islamized during the 17th century. A series of maps in Eaton's book, The Rise of Islam and the Bengal Frontier, shows the coming up of masjids, of mazars, of various other Islamic shrines coming up in the Chattogram area in the mid 17th century and early 18th century. So the Islamization of Chattogram is symbolic of the kind of Islamization that happens throughout the eastern part of the Bengal Delta, starting from the late 16th century. And this is not an Islamization actively sponsored by the state. This is an Islamization that happens due to the migration of Sufis, right? So this is far from a state-sponsored Islamic expansion that one could sometimes think of. This is rather the spread of Islam at the grassroots level, with the Sufis leading, on the one hand, agricultural movements, forest clearance movements, and on the other hand, the conversion of lower caste peasant groups who are at the forefront of this land clearance movement.
My third question would be, in the production of Mughal imperial space in Bengal, in course of the 16th, 17th centuries, how should one read Gaur?
Right. So, in order to begin to answer this question, one has to look at the shifting political geography of the region. Now, this is something that I have already talked about, but I would make a quick reference to a couple of things. One is that, faced by the Mughal penetration of Bengal, the Afghans retreat eastward. And this is a progressive process that happens over the 1570s, 80s, 90s, and the 1600s. They progressively retreat towards the east. They strike alliances with the various Hindu Bengali chieftains. And they try to use the various rivers as covers against the advancing Mughal forces. Number one. Number two is 1590s onwards, the Arakan kingdom in northwestern Myanmar starts launching a series of naval expeditions into southeastern Bengal that ravages the Chattogram, Noakhali, Borishal, these areas of modern Bangladesh. 1620s onwards, these naval raids also become slave raids, because by this time the Arakanese kingdom and their Portuguese allies are both looking to gather more and more slaves so as to supply the demand for slaves in the Dutch VOC, who by the early 1620s have committed a genocide in the Banda Islands. They have captured the production centers of nutmeg and maize, and they require slave labor as plantation labor. They have contacted their allies, the Arakan kingdom, by this time, who on the other hand have also contacted their Portuguese allies. Not the official Portuguese establishment at Goa, but the Portuguese renegades, soldiers and pirates settled in the Chattogram Shondip area of Bengal. Faced by these two political necessities of neutralizing the retreating Afghans and their Hindu Bengali Zamindari allies, and the necessity of combating the Arakanese and Portuguese naval expeditions that start 1590s onwards and increases rapidly after the 1620s, the Mughals make the decision of going towards the east. This is a process that starts under Man Singh in the 1590s. So till the 1590s, for the 2 decades between 1574 when the Mughals enter Bengal for the first time and mid 1590s when under Man Singh for the first time they start venturing towards the east in today's Bangladesh, the Gaur Tara area continues to be the political heartland of Mughal power in Bengal. It is here that it is this area that they use as their political and military base in conquering all of West Bengal over between 1574 and mid 1590s. It is also basing this area, not the city of Gaur per se, but the neighboring city of Tara, that they launch expeditions against the Afghans who keep on retreating southwards. Not only in southern Bengal, today's southern West Bengal, but also into Orissa. And we have to remember that before becoming the Subedar of Bengal in 1594, Man Singh, as the Subedar of Bihar, has already successfully defeated the Afghans in Orissa. And it is only after attaining a sort of geopolitical and military stability in Orissa and southern Bengal that Man Singh leads the campaign into eastern Bengal. Consequently, mid 1590s onwards, Gaur has to respond to this political shift of Mughal power towards the east. Man Singh makes Dhaka, the modern capital of Bangladesh, his main military base in the early 1600s. And as he is succeeded in 1607 by Islam Khan Chishti, Dhaka emerges as the capital of Mughal Bengal. It is from here that Islam Khan leads a series of military expeditions in various directions towards the north, towards the Ghoraghat area, towards the east, Sylhet and other parts, and towards the south. And finally manages in defeating or neutralizing, whichever way you put it, all the Bara-Bhuiya, because some of the Bara-Bhuiya were absorbed in the Mughal Empire while others were killed. But it is between 1608 and 1612 that this entire body of chieftains in eastern Bengal are neutralized by the Mughal Empire. 1620s onwards, the kind of onslaught from the Portuguese and Arakanese naval expeditions that Mughal Bengal faces, the Mughals do not have an answer to. And Shah Shuja, as the Subedar of Bengal, has to shift the capital back from Dhaka to Rajmahal in 1639. And it is only under Shaista Khan in the early 1660s that the capital is shifted back to Dhaka. But throughout this period, Dhaka does not lose its political significance. And although from 1639 to early 1660s, does Rajmahal gain some amount of political significance under the Subedari of Shah Shuja, and Rajmahal is very close to Gaur, but still the kind of halo that Gaur had as a political and military center under the Sultans of Bengal, it does not regain it during this period. Consequently, throughout this entire period of 17th century and the early 18th century, it is Dhaka that remains the political center of Bengal. And even though later Murshid Quli Khan founds Murshidabad and brings the capital back to close to Gaur, Gaur never comes back as the seat of political power.
My next question follows that how did the Mughals engage with Gaur in the next century and a half?
You see, what is most important and most interesting here is that while under the Mughals, the political center of Bengal shifts from the Gaur, Tara, Pandua area to Dhaka. So it's an eastward migration of political power and authority. What Gaur does not lose is its religious halo. There are two saints whose memory is still deeply associated with the city of Gaur. One is Sheikh Alaul Haq and the other is Sheikh Nur Qutb Alam. Their memory is so deeply associated with the city that they continue to be very important places in Mughal political and religious geography in Bengal throughout the 16th, 17th and 18th centuries. More religious than political, of course. There is also the shrine of Kadam Rasul in the Gaur area, which also continue to bestow a significant amount of religious halo on the city. And the shift of political authority away from Gaur cannot rob the city of this religious halo. In the early 17th century, one of the Mughal Mansabdars leading the campaigns of conquest in eastern Bengal, Mirza Nath Khan, we see him coming to Gaur on religious pilgrimage. He visits the shrines of the Sufi sheikhs, he visits the shrine of Kadam Rasul, and then he goes back to eastern Bengal. Of course, in eastern Bengal by this time you have also a number of Sufi shrines coming up. You have the shrine of Shah Jalal, after whom Bangladesh's airport is named today. But this does not rob Gaur, to reiterate the same point, of its political, of its religious power. And the Mughals keep coming back to Gaur, keep revisiting the city of Gaur for its religious charisma.
So my last question to you would be, with the emergence of the independent Nawabi of Bengal, do we witness any reconfiguration in this region?
We do. We do in the sense that there is a new city that comes up, Murshidabad, named after Murshid Quli Khan, who declares independence from Mughal political authority in Delhi. And we see the beginning of an independent Nawabi once again, an independent political formation in Bengal. And with that, of course, Dhaka continues to be a very important political, economic, social and religious center. But once again we see the coming up of a political center near the Gaur area, which is today's Murshidabad, in Western Bengal. This is a significant shift that does happen in the 18th century. And this is augmented by the rise of Calcutta in southern Bengal around the same time, following especially the Battle of Plassey, 1757, and the defeat of the Mughal alliance in the Battle of Buxar in 1764. It is Murshidabad that gradually cedes its power, its authority to Calcutta. By the early 19th century, this process is complete.
To conclude, putting everything in the perspective, with the emergence of the independent Nawabi of Bengal in the 18th century, do we witness any reconfiguration in this region?
Absolutely. Two very important things happen in the 18th century. One is that Murshid Quli Khan, the then Subedar of Bengal in early 18th century, shifts the capital of Bengal back to this city that he names after himself as Murshidabad in today's West Bengal, in central part of West Bengal, from Dhaka in 1704. A few years later, he gets the title of Nawab of Bengal. He exerts his own political independence from the Mughal Padshahi of Delhi. And Murshidabad emerges as the new political center of Bengal. Of course, Dhaka continues to be extremely important, politically, militarily, economically, socially. But it is Murshidabad that now emerges very close to Gaur, remarkably very close to Gaur, but it does not bring back Gaur into its lost political importance. It is this new city of Murshidabad that emerges as the new political center in Western Bengal. One. Number two is it is also around this time that something happens in the southern part of today's West Bengal, which is the emergence of the British port of Calcutta. This is again something very new. Before this, you have had the Portuguese ports in southern Bengal, in southern part of Western Bengal, in Hooghly. But Calcutta assumes enormous importance following the victory of the East India Company in the Battle of Polashi against the Nawabi of Bengal. So 1757, the British victory at the Battle of Polashi, and 1764, the British victory at the Battle of Buxar, decisively marks the shift of political power from the Nawabs of Bengal to the British East India Company. Spatially, this marks the shift of political authority in Western Bengal from Murshidabad to Calcutta. And this shift that happens now from the Murshidabad area is an irreversible process. So while the Mughals in the late 16th century had shifted the capital from Tara to Dhaka, Shah Shuja had shifted it back to Rajmahal near Tara in 1639, and Shaista Khan had shifted it back to Dhaka in the early 1660s. So in a way, the lost importance of the Tara Gaur area had been restored for this very brief period of time, although Gaur had not, specifically speaking, gained any separate political importance. But this shift of authority that happens under the Nawabs of Bengal and under the East India Company regime away from Murshidabad to Calcutta will prove to be a completely irreversible process in history. Never again would political power come back to the area of central Bengal that is signified by either the Sultanate capital of Pandua or Gaur, or the Karani Afghan city of Tara, which the Mughals also used for some time, or the Murshidabad area used by the independent Nawabi of Bengal.